and Valve kind of fought back, and then they were like, okay, you guys are the upstarts, you guys are this small company, we don't respect whatever, so we're going to dump all of our discovery on you. And they dumped like thousands and thousands of pages worth of documents on them, but in Korean. And they just said, good luck, with the discovery. But Valve had a Korean intern. And so the guy spoke Korean and had a degree in Korean. And, they kind of sat him down in front of this pile of information and said, find us, something useful and whatever. And he came up with like one email, which was like, hey, we deleted all those Valve related documents like you asked. That's a smoking gun for for lawsuits. And so suddenly they settled, and stuff like that. They tried to challenge the kid's credentials because he's an intern, but it's like, hi, I speak Korean and I have a degree in Korean. So yeah, I don't think my translation's flawed. And it's all
Korean?
You can do.
Also just hire another interpreter. It's like,
I know.
Is that what it says?
Right. I will pay $50,000 for another interpreter that you believe is credentialed, or you could just admit it right now. Like,
that's how the expert they put on the stand, right? Both sides have to agree that they are an expert. Isn't that how it works? I think so.
Well,
probably
not necessarily.
Okay. I think they front the expert and the other side has to challenge it, right? But
you challenge it during cross as to what they're like. You have to pick it apart. I mean, unless a guy is, if you bring someone on the stand and they're like a witch doctor, like they can say they're accredited all they want, but then it's your job to be like, hey, this guy's wearing a thong and has a staff. Like, what are we doing here?
Well, that means he's a witch doctor. That's very credentialed. Like, he's wearing a thong, he's got a staff.
What is he testifying though? Because if he's testifying about the impact of Western culture on uncontacted tribes, then he might be a really good expert witness at this point.
He's talking about his Steam account,
right? Slightly incredulous at that. Then, so all right, director, did you do the homework?
I did, just barely.
Okay, so we might as well capitalize on your efforts.
Oh, just barely. Aren't you the reason we
started
did this?
2 minutes ago?
Hey, that's not that bad in terms of the digressions in the starting. So okay,
not even close.
Yeah, but I didn't do the thing. We didn't get the thing.
Well, whose fault is that? You're the thing doer. Do the thing.
Welcome to while we weren't recording. Stuff and details, and we're doing Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Let's go.
Right. Okay.
Oh, I'm so glad we interrupted the flow of that for that. So
he wanted to do the thing.
Starts with the interlude episode, the clip episode that is Hohenheim basically having a nightmare of he gets to relive all of the pieces of the story that we've seen so far and just kind of hate himself as to why didn't he save more people earlier? And he has a young version of Pinako telling him things that like humans never stop fighting. They're always going to do something to survive. But then like an evil version of Hohenheim saying like, but humans just die. Even if they weren't about to be murdered, they're just going to die these really short, pathetic lives. So what does it matter? And this sense of helplessness is creating a hopelessness for him. And he sees a young, very young version of Trish that still gives him some kind of hope. Like, so what? It's bad. They're still going to just start going. They're going to make the best of the lives that they possibly can. And it, as always, she gives him hope.
That scene just made me think about how weird it is with the immortals when they've seen someone grow up. If they end up with them, it's like same with vampires or something. It's like a little weird.
It's grooming. He groomed her. It's fine.
More like she groomed him, considering he was so awkward and weird that.
I mean, honestly, that just makes it even weirder and gross. It's like, this small child.
I don't think that's a line we can go down.
Actually, a defense. Yeah. So yeah, but
he was very awkward. She's like walks up to him in the dream of like, "You want to dance with me?" And he's like, "No, just go do the thing alone." And he wants to hide in a corner and do nothing. And
but he doesn't, because why is he there, right? It's like this man has spent 99% of his life in solitude walking through the wilderness. Like, he's at this party for a reason, right? If he wanted to be alone, he could just be over there 200 more feet into the dark woods, instead of sitting right there waiting to be propositioned by a little girl. So
he is
don't put it like
extremely
that.
conflicted. And this is part of him, like, the dwelling on his internal confliction of, like, he wants friends, and he thought he had a family, and that actually spurned him to doing other things because of it, his attachment to them. But the hopelessness that he has of his situation versus wanting to have a connection with them, it's a constant struggle that he can't really kind of solve the issue internally for himself. It's like, yes, he could be not haunted by his friends, but he's going to be anyway because they're his friends.
Well, and I think it's worth mentioning too that it's like Hohenheim is mostly technically human, and I mean that across the board, because it's like, I mean, he's very clearly a human, right? But even before he was made immortal, his humanity, his interpersonal connections were, he was named a number, and he talked to a magical construct or a spirit or something, right? It's not like he's got social skills. He doesn't remember friends from his youth, anything like that. If anything, he kind of hit his prime, when all of the magic stuff was happening before, Xerxes kind of went up, right? But that was like as much human interaction as he had. And then boom, you're immortal, and now it's like, okay, well, it's going to be real hard to connect with people that I already didn't have connections with anyway, So yeah, it's kind of it's an interesting character, because he's all but the perfect foil for the homunculus, for the dwarf in the jar, because it's not human and he's only technically human. So they're just opposite sides of that same coin.
So speaking of the in between this is the interlude episode. It closed on the previous part of Ed and Ling and Envy doing the human transmutation to get out of Gluttony's stomach. And so episode 28 is just named Father. That is what they call the creature that became the dwarf in the flask, that is now a mirror image of Hohenheim, looks exactly like him. So Al is following Gluttony down to where Father is, because he was asking questions like, how do we do anything? Whatever. Al asking questions. Gluttony is really dumb and just like, oh, here he is. Gluttony calls him Father, and then Al says the same word because it looks just like his dad. And as they're very confused for a second, then the full-size Envy, Enling, and Ed burst out of Gluttony's stomach in a whole bunch of noise and screaming and blood. And that was the first time anyone had ever been able to escape, because no one had Ed's cleverness to get out of it.
Or able to cast alchemy. I don't know. He probably ate alchemists before, but you would need to be an alchemist to get out.
How old do we think Gluttony is? Because it's only the oldest is going to be 100 years. How long ago was this ancient empire? Was it 200 years, 300 years, 500 years? What's the scale here?
They say, but I don't remember, because they
talk
talk
it was
about
at least a couple hundred years.
Yeah, it's not like thousands.
We definitely know Gluttony's not the first, right? We definitely know he's not the first.
Wasn't it something like 800 years? Because isn't Hohenheim like old? I don't remember if it was that much.
Various Googling noises.
But the oldest, the oldest would be Pride.
Right, but they can, the way that the homunculi can be recreated, as we're about to be seen, it's going to give an odd thing in terms of their ages.
Right, so this version of Greed is not the same as the last version of Greed, so it's a new entity. So,
but it kind of is.
But it's Greed's mental.
Mm-hmm. Jeez, thank you. Get somebody mute him. No,
I don't know how that wasn't brought up earlier.
The other thing, though, too, is like, how long has been Father creating the homunculi like this, right? Like, he didn't necessarily like leave Xerxes and just pop out Pride. I wouldn't imagine anyway. But
I do think there's something about this whole homunculi thing where he's trying to purge certain kinds of humanity, but I think with Gluttony, it seems like he's trying to create the portal of truth, so that he can have
that is
this
what
power.
Envy said, that Gluttony's stomach was an attempt of creating the truth door dimension thing. So it just became a pocket dimension as a failed door.
But the other parts, the others are just him purging things. This is him trying to create something, and then because it fails, he purges it. But if it worked, he would have had what he wanted at the very end.
Well, I guess it depends on your, because like he is technically creating something every time he purges them, because he is creating them. And gluttony being the representation of some creating that door about his hunger for all this power and knowledge, it ties in. It makes sense thematically to that particular one.
I mean, in the end, they're all like they're a convenient way for him to create powerful henchmen, right? It's like they were all failed experiments because they were all him trying to purge these. They were all either him trying to purge those emotions. They embodied this thing, or they were like gluttony, an attempt to make the gate, which also failed, and then I can make a henchman out of him. So I don't actually know also if are these emotions actually purged from him, or are they just like representative of it, but it's not like purged.
He might have like trace elements or something, but he seemed to be largely bereft of most things. But
he was until until the end when they're all dead. And do they kind of revert back into him? Because when he's young again, he seems to be very emotional at times.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's like these are the 7 deadly sins. These are not all emotions, right?
Yeah.
And these,
because he would have to have in my opinion, he would have to have the base aspect of what these sins represent inside him to have goals, to want to do what he wants to do. Otherwise,
I think that was also part of what quote unquote God was mocking him for at the end. It's like, you tried to do this and you failed even when you were doing it. It's like you never really
had a chance.
Accomplished what you were seeking to begin with. These were always kind of within you type deal.
And I think it's also worth mentioning, it's like, so these are human emotions, and his efforts to purge himself of them were to get him closer to God, and so, or at least what he thought, God would be and whatever. So he was trying to attain a perfect self, as much as anything. The henchman thing and a bunch of other stuff, those are all but happy accidents along the way, I would say we never really see any effort for him to have created, like an intelligence, right? Or anything like that. It just, he probably divested himself of this emotion, and then it's like, Papa, and it's like, well, shit, okay, go over there and smash something, so, but anyway, also to answer the Xerxes question 400 years ago. So before the show, so it's been a substantial amount of time, but not like, a stupid amount of time, so, and it is kind of interesting because like Amestris is a fairly young country as a result, like comparatively. So,
they say it got built up pretty quickly and just like kind of subsumed everything around it through conflict.
Right. Yeah. Which was part of the plan. So, yeah.
All right. So back in the middle of what quickly becomes fighting. Again, there's more surprise about like, oh my God, you look just like Hohenheim. And the father is like, who's Hohenheim? And he has to spend a moment of like, oh my God, it was that guy. The one that he took the whole like DNA body part of. Is just so weird. I was like,
the guy that I named.
So, yeah, everything.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Father is surprised that Hohenheim had children. It's as if that wouldn't have been possible, which is interesting if that wouldn't have been possible. I don't know. He's just kind of examining them. It's like, but you I thought your name was Elric. And there's an explanation of that's their mother's name and whatever. But he does alchemy without having to use a circle, but also without having to do any form of motion whatsoever. He just kind of like creates the missing part of Al's arm and fixes Ed's broken arm really like without anything. And then when the fighting starts happening, he just stops alchemy from being able to happen at all. Which is very weird.
Is
but
never
not alchemy,
right?
Just alchemy.
Just alchemy.
Right.
Specifically. And he doesn't seem to understand why can the other alchemy do alchemy. He's like, why can you do this? I stopped alchemy. Hello?
Right.
So Scar and May were kind of tracking where things had gone anyway. They're searching for the tiny panda Xiaomei that Al still has. And when they walk in, she is extremely scared of all of the crazy monsters that she can feel with the alchemy senses. And she hears that Ed is there, and she's looking for this dashing prince in her mind, and he's just like a gross gremlin, and she's crushed. And is taking it out on him personally that she had romanticized his reputation, whatever. So Gluttony and Scar are fighting. May can still do alchemy, and it's confusing. Ed immediately says to Scar that Envy is the one that had started the Ishvalan War, so attack them and not me, please. Okay. Scar can still use his alchemy as well because his brother had done stuff with alchemy to kind of his ability with his arm is impervious to whatever father just did to turn off alchemy. Scar manages to escape, and Gluttony gets enough damage that he dies. He has used up all of his Philosopher's Stone and everything. There was the moment of the father's pulling out Greed and putting it into Ling, and Ling is accepting it because he's getting a Philosopher's Stone this way. He's becoming a homunculus. He's becoming immortal. Therefore, he's learning the part of immortality to take it back to the Jing Emperor and take his place and all that stuff. Gluttony becomes reabsorbed by Father, and he might have made a complaint at this point of now he feels hungry, or maybe he doesn't, because Pride makes that comment a lot later. But Scar escapes. May isn't to be found. Gluttony dies, and then at the end of all of that, because they still can't hurt Ed and Al, Fathers tells Envy to take them upstairs to Wrath. And then they realize they go up this elevator, and all of a sudden they're in their military headquarters. Like everything's literally built on top of it.
Right. Wait, the evil layer is right below us? So.
Yeah. So there's a moment if they get to
transportation.
Yeah. You get to clean up a little bit. Ed tells Al of seeing Al's body in the doorway, and this is good news because they can try to get it out. And Al reveals that he has May hiding in his armor, very injured. He's always picking up strays in a bad way. When they're shown into the room with the Führer Wrath, Mustang is already there because he had been broken down in the previous part of all of his people are going to be sent away. And his attempts of but the Führer is a homunculus. This is a bad thing. It's like, what exactly is the problem if I am a homunculus? The entire military cabinet has been captured. And there's a moment of all at Ed and Al and Mustang all thinking of just how helpless they are against him because Wrath can move really fast. He's the powerful Führer, and so if they attack him, they're going to be squished and killed. So Ed tries to quit being a state alchemist and give back the silver watch that gives him a station and everything. And Wrath's just like, what was that girl's name? Oh, Winry. If you don't do what I say, bad things will happen to her. And so then he has to continue being a state alchemist. And Mustang has already had that point made to him and moved past it of I'm not going to stop being a dog of military, and I'm not going to stop fighting against you. I'm just going to have to be clever about it.
Get more girlfriends. His superpower. So.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's his adoptive mother's fault, as we find out later.
Right.
But it is a decent superpower.
Listen, it's a decent, even if it's fake, it's just there are worse ways to spend time.
So, as they're leaving, Mustang stops and asks, can he ask one question? And Brat says, yes. Did you kill Maze Hughes? No. He follows up with so who did? Well, you had one question. Yeah. So he doesn't get an answer.
You blew it.
Yeah. There was also
I thought he was Wrath, not a Jinn. Going on the technicalities like that.
Well, then it would be 3, but also he's German, so of course he's going on technicalities.
Okay, das ist true.
See, you know.
There was also a moment of Wrath stabs through the sides of Al's armor because there had been a sneeze from May, and like it like shortly goes over her head, and it's like, huh, I thought something was weird there. And then whatever. They get out of the room. Everybody is safe-ish. Mustang has a false alarm that Hawkeye is missing because she was supposed to be at the car, and he sees Armstrong there instead. And it's like, where did she go? She was kidnapped. It's like, no, she's fine, and she just went to the bathroom. And who was it that told me not to give into despair? Ed demands some change from Mustang because he's going to run and call Winry. Basically, same thing. Is she okay? And she says he's being weird, but the call was nice. He only ever calls her when there's a disaster or his arm is broken, and so it's just a call to check up on her. It's like, oh, that's nice.
Technically, it's still a disaster.
Exactly. Like she doesn't know like how close it is.
It's like the biggest disaster it could possibly be.
Yeah. Ling shows up right next to that phone booth and gives Ed a message in Chinese, and of like, for like, this guy in my head says this. Go give it to the girl over there, Lan Fan. Scar is still wandering in the tunnels and finds Marco because he's wandering in the tunnels that is the base of the homunculus, and Marco had been kept prisoner down there, and Envy was torturing him, feeding him, whatever. Marco is thrilled to have recognized that Scar, the one who is chasing and killing Alchemist that did the Ishvalan War. Al takes May to Dr. Knox's house and is starting to get treated. They give Lan Fan the message, and there's a moment of two very injured Jingese girls are trying to kill each other, and Knox is yelling at them of like, you are guests in my house and you do this. Maybe I'm just going to let all of the bacteria that's been growing in my filthy place kill you guys instead of healing you. And they back down and they be quiet for a minute.
Didn't realize it was that bad until he pointed it out. Like, it was messy, but then when they zoomed in on the floor, I was like, oh boy. What? Is that a new kind of mushroom?
And not the fun kind.
Definitely not.
Or maybe it is the fun kind once. Who knows?
I don't know. He seemed like a fun guy.
Ha.
Oh,
Boom. Get on my level, amateurs. So
I'm sorry.
that's not just a dad joke. That's a father
I
joke.
was going to say I need a higher paying job and 2 children, and
I need kids before I can get on that one.
No. And that's sinking. That's not getting up onto a level. That's going down.
There's a short moment of Wrath chatting with Greed and Ling. Wrath is like just kind of talking about the way that Ling had been yelling at him when they were fighting, of like a king is fighting for the people and is nothing without them, and now he's like giving away. He's no longer going to be the prince of Jing or something, whatever. It's an interesting little moment of conversation between the three of them of how different they are. It didn't have much of a purpose other than just showing how they talk to each other. I found it interesting. All right. So Mustang picks up Armstrong or after that he was there with Hawkeye and everything, explains everything to him. There's no secrets being kept with people anymore. There's a lot of explaining happening off scene to make sure everyone's on the same page as much as possible. And Mustang asks Armstrong to quit the military, save himself, not be involved. And Armstrong remembers that he fled the battles in Ishval because he could not bear to do those things, those massacres, but he didn't fight against the military either. And now he is not going to flee. He's not going to leave these children fighting in his place again. He's going to do what he can to protect it. And if the military is the battleground, that is where he will be.
Right. After this here, we actually see what, like, with why Hawkeye and him, what their long-term goal has been, right? How they
very
want
shortly.
to, yeah,
because Ed is wandering around the city and trying to like make things whole again, repair the things. He's realized, he can do alchemy again, and he hears from other people, it's like, the state alchemists must be so much better than others because they couldn't do anything at all earlier, and like that issue of the alchemy not working was happening in a larger area. It wasn't just them, but he gets to have the happy reputation for it. Why not? Right. And it's a short moment of Marco with Scar. Marco is explaining all of the terrible things that he did in Ishval, and he's like trying to put Scar's hand on his face and say, kill me already, just kill me, and then I won't be the thing that they're using to do more evil things. Very suspenseful moment. But Ed goes to Hawkeye's place to return the pistol that he had borrowed from her, and it's covered in blood, and so she very thoroughly starts cleaning it, but they're chatting because there's been enough things of like what's going on with Ishval that he wants to ask some questions. She was there, and so as she's cleaning the gun, he starts asking like, what was it? And we get to see it from like her point of view, some of Mustang's and Armstrong of the flashback opens with Mustang was being berated from becoming a state alchemist from his alchemy teacher. And the teacher's refusing to teach more of alchemy that wasn't just the basics because the flame alchemy is so powerful. It needs to be held by someone who understands its ramifications. And he takes it as a sign against Mustang that he joined the military and was spouting back that like doing military things and protecting the people is a good thing. It's like, but now you have to massacre people. You are the weapon that we were fighting against. But the guy is dying of poverty and just bad ill in general. And he says, please protect my daughter. She has all my secrets as he's dying. And it was Riza's father that was the alchemy teacher. So at the funeral, Riza and Mustang are talking, and he wants to help her any way he can. And then he goes off and does the military. And then she joins the military to stick around him. She's moved by the way that he thinks of things. He had said something of wanting to take control of more things to be able to protect more people. And she agrees with that. So in this part, Ed feels bad that he wasn't able to protect more people with the gun. He never fired it. It just kind of got brandished by Winry. And Hawkeye understands this, of like this feeling of wanting to protect more people, and points out that, well, Ed loves Winry, doesn't he? And he has a terrible reaction, and it's funny of just like he can't admit it yet that he loves her.
No, family. She's like family. Right. Blushing.
Which is this show. I'm really more and more convinced that this show's about growing up. He can't admit it, and that's of course how it ends. Is he admits it?
It is about growing. He grows up. he gets bigger. He gets more mature. I definitely think that's a theme. Yeah.
Yeah, and I keep going. Sorry.
Okay.
No, you did.
So, well, Ed and Hawkeye are still talking. Scar is interrogating Marco of the same subject, so we get it interspersed with them. Marco starts explaining, or all of it turns very dark very quickly. Of like it was an annexation that the Ishvalans, of course, were upset about it of being taken over, and then Envy had killed the little girl, just pretended to be a soldier, pulled out a gun and killed an innocent little girl and started the whole war. And the fighting continued. And then there was an order written down by the Fuhrer that it was a war of extermination. It was explicitly genocide of killing all of the people. And Riza was a sniper. And she points out that when you are a foot soldier in like infantry, you might be firing indiscriminately. You might not know how many of your shots have killed someone. But as a sniper, she knew pretty much with entire certainty that every time she fired, she killed someone because she could see them. And the same thing with the state alchemists. They knew like when they did something, there was a lot of people who died. But we get to see a little bit of Hughes again in memory that he found Mustang, and they had gone through the academy together. So they were friends. And they're talking about of the past and their idealism and of the future and what can they do in the future. And Hughes has a little bit of his future, which is a letter from Gracia, his wife. And he's the same type of goofy character. It's like, oh, it's so happy. And having that little bit of the letter gives him hope to keep fighting for the next day. And then Riza joins them, finds them, and Mustang sees her there and is immediately very sad that now her eyes are the eyes of a killer, just like all of them. And they start questioning, why is alchemy being used to kill civilians when they should be protecting the civilians? And Kimberly is there, the guy that was in jail, the Crimson Alchemist. He was there for murdering the military officers, and he has no problem admitting that. And he says that they are soldiers. It is their job to do what the military says. And if that is killing these people, then that is killing these people. And whatever tool that they have to use, that's what they have to do. Did they put on their uniforms without understanding that as part of being a soldier? Very calculating black and white view, kind of clashing with their idealism.
Yeah, I feel like Kimberly's very obviously a sociopath as well, right? So, like, he joined the military because he knew that they would give him orders to kill people, and that's what he wanted to do. So, like, he's got this all circular logic of like, well, I'm just following orders and whatever. It's like, yeah, but you enjoyed it. There's a difference. Like, Armstrong also followed orders, and he did not enjoy it. Like,
up to a point, right? Up to a point.
Yeah.
He basically left from cowardice. At least that's
the
accusation.
Cowardice. Yeah, exactly.
It's really moral integrity, but he called it cowardice.
Kimberly is a very good representation of a type of sociopath, psychopath character of like, he is calculating, he understands what he wants and he doesn't want, and he does not care about the ramifications of other people, but he is not an idiot. He's not just like wantonly massacring people. He's doing it in a way of, well, he kind of did with the officers, but he's doing it of like in a calculated way of like, if I join the military, then I get to do the thing that I want.
Sure.
Murder.
Do what you enjoy.
Killing the officers was quite wanton because they wanted to take back the stone. Like, he had a reason.
Right. He did everything. He wasn't just murdering him for fun. He was just like,
he wasn't like, honestly, there's a difference between him and Barry the Chopper. He's got a higher body count, but like, he still is working within a framework.
Yeah.
I like stone, take stone.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah,
and
you came to disarm. You came to disarm somebody from their, massacre device, like, and you came unarmed. Like, you thought that was
as opposed to Barry, who came to disarm you from your arm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Kimberly is just the poster child for like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Oh.
So, yeah.
He is.
He's a
him
very
and
good bad
Armstrong's
guy.
sister are pretty close to the same level of
passion for their work. Yeah.
Devoted work ethic is a strong.
So
gluttony too.
In this moment of memory, Mustang is kind of asking the abstract question of what is the purpose of this war? And Marco answers that exact question to Scar of like, the purpose was to make Philosopher's Stones. The purpose was to kill Ishvalans and to just like, he shows in his memory making the Philosopher's Stones out of of Scar's countrymen. And just like the one that he describes that was given to Kimberly, that Kimberly used to kill Scar's brother. All of this is very intertwined, and everyone hates everyone. There was a day that the high priest of Ishval, Lo, offered his life in exchange for the rest. If they kill him or something, would they stop killing the rest of the Ishvalans? And the Führer, Wrath, refuses because one person's life is only worth one person's life. Very coldly calculated. Like, obviously, his reason is just to make a massacre for the Transmutation Circle. But it's still interesting to view it from the outside, from not knowing that he's a homunculus, of like, why would they think that killing this one person is actually going to stop the killing of anyone else? Because the uprising is still going on.
I thought it was like, in my head, it was implied that he is the leader. You can get me. They will stand down, and you can punish me, and then the whole thing will end.
But
it's possible. That's a calculus people have to take in real life. Like you can easily galvanize them into keep going if you make a martyr of this person, or it could dissolve it. That's the chance you have to take if you're going to do it.
Right. Yes. And this goes back to one of the things in the opening intro, right? The last potent question: what can equal the value of a human life, or something like? Where's that effect, right? What has the same value as a human life? And the answer the Führer has is one life is one life. He just kind of makes it tautological, but also because kind of as a tyrant, he's just using people as just batteries and sources of power, and without distinction towards anything else. That one life and one life and one life, without having really kind of a amoral view of why you should care about anybody. People are only useful, only good for what use they are to you, and that is profoundly evil. So I think it's a very interesting that the Führer answers that question very explicitly. What can equal a human life? Well, a human life. And whatever you can do for me is, what he wanted obviously was more Philosopher's Stones and furthering the end of creating the massacre.
But he does have his own philosophy in it of like in this argument. One of the Ishvalan priests has said that God's hammer is going to strike you down. It's like, how many more people do I have to kill for that to happen? It's not happening. And so if you want to strike me down, do not get carried away, human, fight me yourself type thing. Then it gets him the answer of more people dying, but like, don't wait on God's laurels to strike me down. Do it yourself.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's the kind of answer you can usually, and it's funny enough, it's like a joke in Blazing Saddles where he's like, you know, a man drinks like that and doesn't eat anything, he's going to die. And he's like, okay, when? You know, is this going to happen? When is it going to happen? But his mentality is also kind of utilitarian because, you know, there are important people, not because they're people though, but because of what, like, you know, you don't kill Ed and Al because they have utility to you in a different way. So there are certain lives that are worth more than others, but it's not in any kind of moral or personal or emotional sense, except or unless you consider his relationship with his wife, which he seems to consider as different.
His relationship with his wife and adoptive child is hard to get your head around.
I think it's probably a little self-deluding. Like, I feel like it's a little one of those, like, yeah, maybe he felt that way and maybe there was something there, but at the same time, it only gets mentioned really hardcore twice, and one of them is at the end when he's dying, and it's kind of like the wrap up of his character, and it's like, all right, I get it. You know, maybe he loved his wife. You're not making me feel anything for him. It's a little too late.
Maybe, but Wrath has a I don't know, another kind of calculus of understanding that every individual has a reason of fighting or their own sense of pride. Like he pointed out to Mustang, like, was Les not a prideful woman when she died? There's a pride in homunculi being homunculi, and he recognized the same thing in humans. He says it's something to pride at some point of like, all those puny youngling humans are going to get you the oldest homunculus. They look at all the things that they've accomplished. Don't denigrate them in their efforts. He can recognize the capabilities of a person. He does not just sweepingly say humans are not worth anything.
No, I think there's an undercurrent of him feeling superior, but he's able to recognize on a different level than others that, you know, there's something to either be worried about or respect, or at least acknowledge of.
Yes.
Well,
even people you consider inferior.
So, and pride explicitly says humans are not worth anything, or and yet every other homunculus will say, insist on the value of certain individuals as sacrifices, right? As things they can use. Obviously, there's that element, but also that they do recognize as some value of humanity. And Pride's answer is that there is no value, and he's as the eldest among us. He's the first thing Father got rid of, right? And so that there's no trace of that in the homunculi, I don't think. You don't think so? Too much of a stretch?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on, because, like, I don't think, for example, Gluttony really cares about people because he's very single. Like, Greed obviously does, but that's also part of
his whole
sort of his thing is
thing.
Feeding into that. You know, like he doesn't really want people for the sake of the people that they are. He wants them because he considers them his.
Right.
But,
you know,
right,
lust is lust, and envies them. So
Gluttony, for all that he is, all he wants to just devour things. He did care of Lust, who was basically his caretaker. Like the reason that he went berserk at Mustang was because Mustang killed Lust and like took away his family member that he cared about. And so it's not that he is devoid of other emotions.
or attachments. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, keep going. At the end of the war, there was a point. A Mustang was asking Riza, why did she go to war? And she says that basically, by the logic of the equivalent of exchange, in order to make a good thing happen for future generations, they have to do a bad thing now. And so she was trying to make good things happen. And she is appointed to his assistant, and Mustang makes it very clear that she is watching his back. And so if he strays from what the good path, then she is to kill him, to shoot him, because she's both protecting him and making sure that he doesn't do crazy shit. She swears to follow him into hell if need be. And they do have this goal, and Riza tells Ed this, that they are going to get to the top of the military to be able to eventually make the war criminals face trials for what they've done. It's not just become the Führer. It is also change the assembly, move it back into a democratic type of country to be able to bring this about. It's even if the homunculus were behind it, we were the ones who carried it out. Because Ed starts protesting. It's not your fault. It's the homunculus that did it. They still made the choice to follow the orders.
And it's also an act of self-sacrifice and self-punishment, self-loathing, I guess, for the war crimes.
Yes.
I hate myself so much I'm going to become president.
It's a good punishment.
I would hate it, but
have you seen those guys? Like,
they grow old fast,
right?
Unless they're orange, then they just seem.
I was going to say one of them didn't.
Yeah, well, they just seem to stay in the same state for the last 30 years.
Yep.
So, towards the end of the episode, May learns who Alphonse is, and he's the more handsome, taller, gallant version of Ed, and so therefore that's now her new crush. When Envy then learns that Marco is gone, and that he was trying to bring him food, and it looks like Scar has killed Marco. It looks like there's a body there. There's like vengeance written on the wall. It's like, but Envy's not dumb, and he doesn't think that Marco's actually dead. And regardless, they still have to kill Scar because Scar keeps getting in the way. All right, then the next episode, Ed tells Al of everything of Ishval, and they comment that Mustang is planning for what happens after achieving the goal. And they hadn't really done that part yet. It's just like, get the bodies back, but then what? Well, eating apple pie, I guess, but they hadn't thought of the rest of life. They have to learn alchemy from May because, one, it wasn't turned off by whatever Father had done, and also it has a medical angle to the magic, and so maybe it can do something to help repair their bodies. Sort of, which it does. But there's moments of Mustang's people saying goodbye to each other as they're sent to all the different non-corners of the country, including some of them being into war zones. And Mustang has his chessboard that he got from Grumman, and he's just like naming all of his people as chess items that they have been taken away, including his queen, his Hawkeye. But he has not been checkmated yet, and he opens up for the king piece, and there's a note inside of it. While searching for May and the tiny panda, Mustang picks up Ed and Al in this exchange of information again, but he starts demanding his money back. And Ed had borrowed the money to call Winry, and Ed says, like, I'm not giving this back until you become Führer. And then I'll make another loan from you, and I won't give that back until you make it a democracy. And then I'll do something else. I'm going to have to live a very long life to keep you to your promises. Mustang goes to a brothel, and he speaks to Madam Christmas and gives him the note, and she calls Grumman, and Fu, Old Man Fu, the guy that was with Ling, meets Lanfan at Dr. Knox and has to learn that she cut her arm off, and they have to go do other things, and he leaves the doctor. They're going to have to go find a different automail person because they refuse to get more help from Ed and Al. And there's a moment of Knox is bothered by the fact that all three of his patients essentially have thanked him, and he doesn't get things. He's a bad guy. He did bad things in the military, but his son and his estranged wife, they come by and they're trying to just take care of him. The son says he wants to be a doctor and to help people, and Knox, also self-hating, is just basically asking God, is it okay that I have coffee with my family? And he's crying because all he wanted to do was help people, and he doesn't think he deserves happiness.
Depends. Is it decaf? It's pretty late at night.
But decaf is heresy.
Sorry. You know, it has calf in it still. It's just less. It's not no.
Low
Why
calf.
less when you can have more?
Exactly.
So it's not
Well,
fat free. It's
to
stupid.
be fair, I just had my first espresso drink, and I can't remember how long it's been because it was like bonus day for that.
All right. We get the reminiscing of Kimberly killing the officers. He says, basically, the Philosopher's Stone, it helps you do so much more. Okay, that's great. Now give it back. And he says, I'm not giving it to you. And he just kills them and swallows it. And he has no problem with just like throwing it back up and swallowing it back and forth. They never did take it away from him. Envy gets Kimberly released out of jail. And as he's leaving, one of the jail wardens is like, I can't believe that someone like you gets to just go free. And Kimberly scares the shit out of him by putting a little ticking thing on his watch, and he thinks that it's gonna explode into a bomb, and it's a squeaky duck that just like, haha, it's a child's toy. Even psychopaths know how to tell jokes. But Kimberly is very aware of who the Monclei are. He understands who Envy is when he does a face change of like, now we have a job for you, and he's excited about it. He remembers who Marco is. He understands who Scar is, so it's time to go find him. He's going to be their hound dog. Envy gives another Philosopher's Stone to Kimberly and remarks that it was the scientists that would help Marco do the research that had then been turned into Philosopher's Stones themselves. So now he has two. Scar melts Marco's face to hide his identity, and it's just like all lumpy and stuff now. Scar doesn't understand all of the notes from his brother, and so he needs Marco's help to better understand it. Clearly, Scar's brother is the one who found all of the answers of what's going on, and so the notebook becomes very important, and everyone has to understand it. And so they have to go find the notebook of where he stashed it, which was in the north. May had joined up with Scar again, and so she's also going to the north. And so slowly we're getting this issue of we need to go that way. Ed and Al can't find May or the missing panda anymore. May bumps into Grumman in disguise as an old woman, and she makes a comment that she's going to the north, and he sees the tiny little panda. So later, Grumman went to Mace Hughes's grave to talk with Mustang, and it's all funny that he's dressed as an old woman, and he sees that the drawing that they had of trying to find the panda is like, oh, I think I know where she's going. But Scar was seen in a tunnel with a middle-aged man with black hair, and he's running west, and so Kimberly has to go west to find him. But he's also takes note of Grumman in disguise, and then she says, I don't care, and keeps going. It's not his problem, even though he's suspicious that there's something going on. It's not his job. Ed and Al are trying to go to the library.
Don't do work you're not getting paid for.
Right. Another Philosopher's Stone, perhaps. Ed and Al go to the library to try to learn anything about alchemy that they can find, and it's basically nothing in those books. It's just like, yeah, it exists, it's over there, and that's it. So nothing productive. But Selim Bradley is there, and he is very excited to have seen the Elric brothers. He knows who they are. He says something about Ed's height, and it's like, oh, you do get angry just like you're supposed to. And then they realize that that child is the Fuhrer's son. But they get invited to tea and talk with Selim and the wife, and she's so excited. And then when Wrath himself shows up, there's chatting, and they have to pretend to be cordial when they're really not, and there's still this feeling of threat. But Wrath says, like, you're thinking that he looks nothing like me, right? Well, you're correct, and that he was adopted. And that puts it in perspective of, yes, the homunculi cannot have children, which is probably why Father was so surprised that Hohenheim had children, even though he's still technically human, like we were describing earlier. I don't know. And everything was just kind of scary. But Ed and Al plan to go to the north that they hear from Mustang that's where May is probably going. And Kimberly is chasing Scar. Everyone's going that direction. So episode 33, the northern wall of Briggs. Good section of Kimberly chasing Scar on trains going west. And then it's like there's a section of the mountain pass that the trains have to slow down because mountains and all those curves. And so one could just jump off the train at that point, right? And they see that there's a landslide that was basically caused by alchemy that has those signs of it. And it's like he's very, very clever and is able to catch up with Scar. And like if Scar's going this way and it's not going to work, then he's not going to keep going that way. And he's not going back the other direction because Central would be bad. And it's just very quickly putting together everyone's going north. And that Marco, the old middle-aged man with black hair, was not Marco. It was Yoki that was hiding in disguise. Marco and May are trudging in the snow, walking all the way up north. There's a little showdown of a fight on an open car of the train that Kimberly and Scar are fighting. Just like kind of reasonable badassery of the fight. Sorry. Okay. Like Kimberly breaks off the cart of the trains connecting them after he got severely injured by Scar so that he can survive. And after Kimberly was taunting Scar of why they hate each other and all of the people that they were killing in Ishval. It's just a really small moment. Winry called to talk to Ed and Alan. He's told that they went north. And if they went to Briggs or something, then her mentor is like, oh, if that's the case, they're going to die. And it just cuts away to them. And they're in the north and it's snow. And somebody asks, like, if Al is automail, no, it's armor. Okay, that's good. But if you leave the road, you'll be killed. And they don't know why the automail thing is a problem. And then they do leave the road and they do almost get killed by Buccaneer, the really big guy that's basically a bear that fights for Mrs. Armstrong. And he has automail that is different and better. Ed's alchemy doesn't work to destroy it because it's of a different composition because they're in the north. And Ed has no idea. And his
metal cold bad.
Yes, his limbs are starting to like stick and not really work correctly. And they get held up. And then Olivier Mira Armstrong is looking down at them from the wall. And a letter that Alex Armstrong had written to introduce them, she sees it and she is told from Ed that he's the Fullmetal Alchemist and all that, but she doesn't believe it because anybody can pretend to be someone famous. She looks at the letter, she sees that it's his stamp of like, yep, that's him, and she rips it up. So she smart enough to wait of, yep, this is actually the person that my brother says it is because he wouldn't lie about that, but I don't trust his opinions. Anything beyond that, she gets the important information and then doesn't care about anything else. When the fog separates for a minute, they see that the wall of this fortress is really tall, and Ed's being an annoying kid about it, and she starts yelling at them like, I'm not going to treat you like children, and Briggs is a harsh place. And that episode ends on May and Marco finding the notebook and starting to read it and understand, or attempting to understand. Okay. Episode 34, the Ice Queen. Ed learns that there's a difference needed of automail for the cold, and he had not known of it because he didn't tell Winry that he was going, and all of those things that he should have like asked the question of, hey, is there anything about different biomes that I should be aware of with metal?
You've got a resident engineer and you don't even ask the question. How very Dresden of you. So
yeah, it is his only real moment of the Dresden not asking a question, so I'll give it a pass. But
is
Olivia pretty much, he asks questions all the time. So Olivia asks about Alex and is he healthy? And the two of them say, yes, he's very healthy. It's good. Like, this is good news, right? And she's pissed. It doesn't explain. And then she starts prompting them to explain, why are they at Briggs? What's going on? But they have all those restrictions of not being able to say or do anything by the Fuhrer because Winry's being held hostage. And so they give the short story of they're trying to learn about alchemy to get their bodies back. And so they need to find May. And so she's stewing people to send people out to find the tiny panda. And she doesn't accept their story. She understands that there's something else that they're holding back. And so she wants to kick them out and let them die in the cold. But she's also interested in alchemy. And so they can stay for a little bit. There's an introduction of Miles, which is one of her lieutenants people. I don't know his actual rank, so don't hold me to that part. But he is part Ishvalan, and so he has like the whiter hair and the red eyes. And in the description of him, his grandfather was Ishvalan, and the rest of his family had been purged. They'd actually been killed because it was a war of extermination. It was not just war of the rebellion. And he had been spared because he was just far enough away. And why he's still like fighting alongside Armstrong is he had asked her, is this a problem? His presence with the rest of the military is going to be an issue. And she basically says, why would it be an issue? Like, we're all fighting on the same side. And if you doubt me, I challenge you to a one-on-one fight and I'll fucking kill you. Just her being scary in the correct ways. The warrant officer, Fallman, is there. I did note down his rank. Fallman was one of Mustang's people. And he's there doing grunt work of breaking the ice and making it easier to walk because everything is dangerous in Briggs. Everything. But Fallman starts showing them around the other place, and they go down to one of the engine rooms where something weird is happening. And we see this gigantic beast of a person that is Sloth, a homunculus sloth, and he's digging a tunnel, and the floor collapses, and so he comes out of the tunnel and immediately goes to sleep. He's complaining the whole time of it. This is a pain, and that is a bother, and I don't want to do anything. But he's like 3 feet tall or 3 stories tall. He's just like so much muscles of like he has all of the ability to do the thing and none of the wanting to do it.
He's my spirit animal.
He's my spirit animal.
Yeah.
But Ed and Al recognize it as a homunculus, and they start talking to Sloth. And so Buccaneer like starts nearly shooting at Ed of like, you are definitely spies from Drachma, which is the country on the other side of the border. Absolutely, you have to be. Why do you know this thing? And there's this like give and take of Ed cannot tell many details because he's been ordered from up above not to. Of like, it's kind of human. I can't tell you what to do about it or why he's here or anything like that. You're gonna have to guess. But Olivia gets okay. So it's human. It has the human-like problems, and so she gets an idea. Then the next episode opens up with they're dragging and pushing and like firing tanks at the thing, which does not hurt Sloth whatsoever. But they get him outside and they douse him in gas, and then he freezes to death, or not to death, but he just freezes to stillness. And then Ed and Al are thrown into jail under suspicion. Miles has to go visit the hospital where Kimberly is. And Kimberly is very injured with like gut wound of like a spear went all the way through it and crazy stuff. And okay, so they're searching for Scar. So they have lots of things happening here. And then Raven, the guy that betrayed Mustang to Wrath, essentially, is visiting Kimberly too. And he has a doctor in tow. And that doctor is very creepy. But then, it cuts to Marco is trying to understand what all of the notebook stuff means. And like there's this dragon's pulse of alchemy. And so May tries to describe it. It's like the chi, it's the power that's like flowing through the land and tectonic something or other. And uses the analogy of acupuncture. And so she starts jabbing Marco in different places and making him hurt in other places with referred pain. But he describes alchemy working on the tectonic energy of the land too. But May says that's not the whole story. There's something different about that country and how it works. There's something missing there. Olivia investigates the tunnel, this gigantic tunnel, and takes Ed and Al and Fallman and Buccaneer and other people and horses, and they start walking to see how far it goes, and clearly it's unending. That was the first person that had gotten through into Briggs and Armstrong's time there. There was a time before her residency there, about 20 years ago, where there was a woman that was stealing all of the food from the whole winter. And they put together, that was their teacher. That was Izumi, which is like, I spent at least a month in Briggs and surviving that winter. Yeah. Crazy lady versus crazy lady would not have gone bad.
Yeah.
But down there, where no one can see, clearly they're not going to be listened to. She demands the full story between like all of the things that they weren't saying before that Ed was hoping that she would put together, explain it all then. And they do. She feels for Mustang's people. She knows who Havoc and Hawkeye is. And Fallman goes like, do you feel bad for Mustangs? No, couldn't care less about that guy. Basically, Mustang is a rival for her against the wanting to rise to the higher ranks of the military. And the tunnel is slightly curving, and it's basically a gigantic circle. And this is Justin's favorite moment of like, they look down at the map and they see that it's a circle. And they start putting points and points and points and points together of all of the different, like, that was a bad thing and that was a bad thing. And we'd line up the points and, oh my God, it's a human transmutation circle.
I only figured that out like 10 episodes ago by now. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of good in here, right? Like fighting this giant behemoth with a tank isn't terrible. You know, there's just the Briggs stuff.
Inside, by the way.
A lot of fun.
With a tank inside, not just the tank.
Yeah.
It's cold outside. Where are you going to keep your tank?
Yeah, right. It's not rated for cold weather. Come on now. Yeah. So
not only is it was inside, but it was only like 10 feet away, and it like blasted off part of his face, but just like didn't do anything. Yeah, it's crazy shit. So as they're putting all this together, and not only are they using the country, one of the oldest one was like just after the creation of the country. They created Amestris to do all of these things. It is literally from the beginning. And I really like.
I always wondered why it was kind of circle shaped, you know, said no one ever apparently in this world. See, I'm just saying that's another question that, you know, the Elric brothers didn't ask. So
what I'm surprised is why
circle-shaped?
Some guy other than Father didn't take advantage of it. He was like a crazy alchemist, right? Why isn't there some guy who had that? Oh, you know what? It just so happens, you know, Amestris is almost circle shaped. What if I did, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't done yet, and you need hundreds of years to do this thing.
Right.
Biggest problem.
Yeah, and the other counterpoint to that is they did. It's called episode 1, right? And that's all that foreshadowing that pays off now, because that guy realized that the capital is also a circle, and that if he puts, you know, alchemy stuff at key points, then he can turn the whole city into a alchemist circle. And yeah, so like he recognized what was going on, and he was going to try and sink the city into the rock or something, you know, but they stopped it. So
the one part that is missing on the country circle is that there has not been a massacre at Briggs. And so Olivia Armstrong is pissed of like, she's like, you're not going to do anything to my people. And her anger at the human transmutation circle of a country.
She's technically correct.
Yeah. She takes it's my country, and kind of like, she doesn't care that they did this from the beginning. It is my country. How dare you do that? You don't get to use my people for it. I love her so much. Raven shows up at Briggs and has Kimberly in tow. And so Miles is set with Kimberly of like, escort him around, see what happens. And Ed, after hearing about this, is like, okay, we have to make a plan. And they get a little bit clever. Olivia is describing to Raven of Sloth that they couldn't kill him, and then a little bit about Elric, and she's kind of playing a more stereotypical woman of, oh, I wish I didn't have to get old. I love children so much. And Buccaneers, they're listening in, and he's just cackling of like, this is so dumb. It kind of ends on a suspenseful moment, and this next episode has a turn. It's the episode 36, and it's family portrait, and we get to see from Hohenheim's point of view some of those memories that have come back, and we've seen in multiple different ways. He was watching Ed and Al sleep when they were really young, and he feels bad about everything. And she says, like, maybe he could just touch them while they're sleeping, caress them a bit, and he doesn't want them to catch it. And she says, that's ridiculous. I would have caught it a long time ago if that was the case. And she's right. But he feels like a monster, and he's terrified of the differences. He had gone through his long life of just like the worth that he could find is like something was interesting or something was pretty, and that was enough. But now it's not enough, and he's terrified of watching his family live life and get old and die while he cannot join them with it. And she arranges for a family portrait to be taken, a picture, and this is like 1905 or something, and so it's hard to do. And asks him to smile. He is not a monster, so he should stop distancing himself from the family. And when the picture is taken, we finally get to see that he was crying during it.
Yeah, so this picture's been hidden throughout the entire show and covering his face, and it just leads into, the common tropes of like, he didn't care about the kids and he's a bastard, and this is what Ed and Al think of him and all of this other stuff, and then you finally see it, and it's because he's bawling, and it's like, oh man. So
right,
that doesn't melt
I
your
take
heart.
that as kind of a double reveal, because initially when I watched this, my thought was, oh, his face is covered because they don't want the viewer to know that father looks just like him and try to figure out why. They want them to, they want Ed and Al to have that moment. Like, are you Hohenheim? Or whatever. They have that first confrontation, the first meeting with the character. They think maybe it's the same person, when almost immediately it isn't. But turns out that wasn't the reason, like you said.
Yeah, multiple reasons.
The reveal
Very
within
well
the reveal, the truth within the truth.
Nice.
So Hohenheim starts researching because he wants to grow old with his family and die with them like a human. He doesn't want his sons to grow old and die while he still stays the same, because he does very much care about his sons. And this shows him researching late at night, and Ed is kind of peeking into the office, so like, what you doing? And then he's like, oh, that bastard. And he put together, of course, what's going on with the circle country and everything. It shows him falling out of the tree when he's trying to fix their swing, because he could have done it with alchemy, but no, he decided to do it the dumb way and nearly hurt himself.
Mundane. Dumb.
The human way, that's the point of the show. Yeah, Ed gives up his alchemy.
Directors I have not. She's like, if I was an archmage, I'd fucking magic everything. So, like, what? Who's going to use a freaking hammer? Like, worst case, I magic the hammer. So,
yeah, no, that's what I do. I'm not going to use my muscles for that.
If your hammer is Mjolnir, I'm still using it
for sure. If your hammer is Mjolnir, everything looks like a nail.
Everything is a nail. There's no looking like it is. That's just a simple fact of life.
Hohenheim has to say to Trish that he is leaving, and please wait for him. And she does. She's very sad, but she accepts it, and she's supportive. And he says that he doesn't want to wake the boys because he's leaving like before dawn, because he would cry. And she says it's okay to cry. But the boys are up anyway because Al needed to go to the bathroom, and Ed was going to take him, and they're taking care of each other. And isn't that so sweet? And Hohenheim is about to cry again. He's about to like break, and he sees his son that he has to leave. And so that's when we see him like harden himself. And that's what stuck in Ed's memory of him looking so mean and gruff. And then he has to go. Very painful moment. Back in the tunnel up near Briggs, there are scouts that are just kind of like on horses, and they're searching through it, and they start getting very scared because there's a big monster down there, but they don't know what it is yet. Raven is still being very gross at Olivia Armstrong, and the whole like, what if it was possible for immortality or internal youth, and we just have to like pick the chosen ones out of the all of the weak ones that we're just gonna sacrifice, whatever. And then there's something went wrong with the tunnel, and she gets a report, And so Raven goes with her, and he tells her to seal it up again, unfreeze Sloth, put him back in the tunnel, let him complete his work. But there was one of the scouts that like only his arm had returned back from the horse that had run back with it, and the horse is completely terrified and about to hurt itself, really. So this small interlude. Marco is still working on the notebook, but a lot of the important bits are written in ancient Ishvalan, and so he can't read it, and he needs Scar to translate it. And wouldn't you know, Scar and Yoki join up again right then, but they know that they've been tracked by some of the Briggs officers, so they have to move from the little house that they were hiding in. Miles is very suspicious with Kimberly and just kind of escorting him around. It's like, you were near death one morning, and then that same day you show up here completely healed. What happened? By what magic did you do that? And Kimberly's like, it's not your problem. It's not your business. Stop asking this question. But he's buying time to try to keep Kimberly away from Raven and everything, while pouring concrete to fix up the tunnel again. Raven is being more gross of like, yes, you're going to have all of the things that we're promising you. How often does he just go out around to everybody? It's like, do what I say and you'll get instant immortality. He's like the salesman that's giving it away to everyone, not able to keep a secret. But she can't deal with him anymore. And so she pulls out her sword and stabs him through the arm. And he's like, what arm came back from my scout that was just murdered? Was it the right arm or the left arm? And starts like attacking him and pushing him into the concrete pour. And then takes off her glove to clean the blood and like throw it in with him. Like, you are going to literally become the foundation of this state, and leaves him there to die in concrete. Ed has been pretty sure that something like that was going to happen. If they're going to say, let Sloth continue, fix up the tunnel. And so he made an extra panel somewhere else of like an access panel shaft. And then that episode ends of like Kimberly's talking to Ed and Al, and Winry shows up because Kimberly has so helpfully brought the automail mechanic to help him, his arm and leg, to deal with the cold. And Mustang gets a message from Olivia Armstrong about all of the things that has happened from the florist that says like, it's time for you to buy some flowers. Which like, buy for all that pretty girls. And it's like, I'll buy all of your flowers if you keep telling me things. Okay. The first homunculus is the title of the episode 37, and when Winry is working on fixing Ed's arm, and he's warning her against being too trusting of Kimberly, and it shows that Kimberly had been a nice, normal, decent human being to Winry, putting on the face of, I remember the Rockbells. They were so kind and nice. They died holding your picture. They loved you so much. And then he gets embarrassed that Reza had pointed out that he loves Winry and can't deal with his feelings anymore, whatever. There's a funny moment that Buccaneer is like talking about the automail differences, and this very cute, adorable automail mechanic that's so excited, and she's attached to Ed, and that makes Buccaneer very angry. And so he punches Ed for like no reason. It's like, this makes my stomach turn, and then walks away. Just, how dare you have a cute automail mechanic?
Actually outrageous.
Yeah. Hawkeye has to turn in some paperwork to the Führer's residence and sees Selim and the Führer's wife.
Has the tattoo been revealed yet about Gunnar?
Huh?
At this point? No, did we skip? Has that happened yet? The tattoo she has, Hawkeye? Her dad's alchemy?
Oh. Maybe? I mean, there's some parts of the that she has the tattoo on her back that would have been burned off. That has been revealed. I guess I skipped it.
Okay.
Right. Hawkeye with Selim. She learns from the Führer's wife that Selim was adopted from somewhere of the Führer's side of the family. And she immediately puts together that means that there's something suspicious going on, because she knows that Bradley was raised from like a baby that doesn't have any family. So Selim was something very suspicious. And yes, Pride reveals himself as being the first homunculus, this monster from the shadows that will always be watching her and anyone else. He's very creepy. And so she gets a little bit jumpy of any form of shadows. Kimberly, after being told that Raven cannot be found anymore, and he's under no delusions of what happened, but he doesn't care. He recruits Ed to find Scar and Marco, again with Winry as a hostage. Of he has to do this or else. Ed explains to Winry that he's being used as a weapon and he might need to do a very large massacre as a state alchemist. And she tries to tell him, no, don't do it. And then realizes that she is a hostage and feels bad that all she is just a burden. But she squeezes herself into the car of chasing after Scar and Marco on the guise of she has to do maintenance. What if his arm breaks in the middle of a fight? That would be terrible. And the beginning of the conflict at this town, Bashul, it's kind of an empty town, was a mining town near the Briggs area. But Hawkeye is extremely jumpy, and it shows her that she's like getting afraid of all types of shadows in the phone call. But Mustang had called as like, hey, I have a lot of flowers that I have no idea what to do with. Can I give them to you? But he knows is that she's upset, and he just like, what's wrong? Are you okay? And she says that she's fine. And she doesn't have any vases because all she lives is in like boxes and a single piece of like a table. She has no furniture, so she can't hand any form of flowers. But it comforts her enough anyway. Searching for Scar in the town, Ed and Al manage to sneak away from the people who are trying to escort them. And they're searching for May and can't find her. But May was searching for Al because she's guided by her romantic crush, whatever. And Yoki appears and is now is in the same room with Ed and Al and says, you bastards, you ruined my life. And everybody's like, who are you? And this is when we get the black and white little memory
this is
reel.
My actual favorite episode because I have no idea what the hell is going on. So yeah.
But
like, let's do it in silent in Japanese. Like, oh boy.
So Yoki had a mining town that he was like governor of or something, and was in his way of spinning it of so politely telling the miners, wouldn't you please pay your back taxes? And they're actually just being extorted and pressed down, and he's a tyrant dictator. And Ed had sold him for a whole bunch of gold in exchange for the deed of the mine, and the gold reverted back to lead in a classic alchemy type situation. And the miners had the deed, and so they beat up Yoki, and they ruined his life. And somehow he was snuck into the Armstrong Manor and found the little sister, and she was like all freaked out and like threw a piano at him or something. As
Armstrongs do,
right? And so it goes on and on. Now you ruined my life and everything. They have moved on in the conversation. There's like, yeah, I don't care. Who are you? And he's like, don't dismiss me. Whatever. There are two of the military chimeras that find Scar because they are chimeras. They were able to find him by scent. It was, I didn't write down their names. I forgot them. There's a boar type one, and there's a frog type. And there's a lot of fighting going on. But May and Marco and Yoki, Winry, Ed and Al are talking that everything that they need to know is in this notebook. But they need Scar to be able to help explain more things. They all need time to research. But obviously with the fighting in the military in Kimberly, there's the two chimeras against Scar, and Ed and Al kind of get the chimeras disabled enough to fight Scar, get Scar disabled. And Winry gets involved and starts asking why Scar killed the rock bells, and he says, doesn't reason matter, what matters is that I killed them. But they have to kind of end that conversation short because of Kimberly's searching for them. It goes to Buccaneer, and they know that they're in the tunnel. They found the people who had survived, and there's like trying to turn off all of the lights because the monster works via shadow. So if there are no lights to define the shadow that is the monster, therefore they'll be okay. And they try to get back up there, but it's past the hour when they should have been returned. And so they're certain that the passageway has been closed up. But it wasn't closed up, and they were allowed to come up. And when Buccaneer was asking, it's like, you're not late because I used a specific watch, and the one that Armstrong gave, and it's broken, and it's never going to reach the whatever hour.
That was also one of my favorite scenes. Yeah, like we followed the clock. Damn thing's broken. So,
yeah, we've been waiting patiently, following the clock. And in her way of never admitting any kind of mercy, Buccaneer was just like, thank you for your mercy and allowing us to come back up before sealing it up. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Don't say the quiet part out loud.
Unlike Raven, whatever. There's a big explosion in the town Bascule where Scar has been kidnapped. And Ed is yelling at Kimberly, why did you let Winry out of your sight? Because Scar has supposedly kidnapped Winry. And we end on that tense moment. Episode 38. We're done. Did part 3. Did it.
Woo.
Whatever. Find out what will happen next. The next episode of While We Weren't Recording. See, you can support us on YouTube by going, subscribing, and liking and commenting, and you can give us your money on Patreon, patreon.com/brokenjars, where you will get access to our Discord server, and you can chat with us, have gift wars with us. That's up to you. You don't have to do whatever you want. Just give us money.
Great pitch.
I try.
So more death masks next week, right? Because you're better at homework than I am at this time.
Sure.
Justin is the homework god.
Apparently. Or at least for right now.
Ask his college professor. She always got his things in on time.
Joke's on you. He didn't go to college.
All right.
Wait, did you actually go to college?
Okay.